Hello, everybody. I'm Heather Hayes.
And I'm Steve Eager. It's 9 o'clock. Along with announcing the firing of that rookie officer, Arlington Police Chief Will Johnson also released the 911 call made after the 19-year-old Christian Taylor broke into an Arlington car dealership. Shortly after this evening's press conference, Chief Johnson arrived at an NAACP meeting held tonight at the New Life Fellowship in Arlington. While there, he said Taylor committed a felony, but it wasn't worth him dying.
Meanwhile, demonstrators once again gathered outside the Arlington Police Department. Most say they were believing firing that officer still is not enough. But tonight, they had some opposition.
All right, so we have team coverage tonight. Fox 4's Deanna Zoga and Natalie Solis with reaction, and Brandon Todd with more on the investigation and the firing. Brandon's at the Arlington Police Department with the shooting details. Brandon.
Well, Steve, this shooting fell squarely on the shoulders of that rookie officer. And we're not talking just about that decision to use deadly force. Chief Will Johnson today saying it was multiple decisions before that that led up to the shooting that put him face to face with Christian Taylor.
I have found several decisions made on scene to be troubling.
Chief Will Johnson laid out several tactical mistakes made early Friday morning at the Classic Buick GMC in Arlington. Mistakes that led to the shooting death of 19-year-old Christian Taylor by rookie officer Brad Miller. And he says many of those mistakes were made by Miller. The original call was that Taylor was erratic, jumping up and down on a car and eventually ramming his SUV up into the showroom.
That's just jumping on top of the car now.
On that surveillance video, we see the first responding officers.
I just saw a guy in the building has a hat on, like a straw hat.
The officer who made that radio dispatch, who was not Miller, was the first to spot Taylor.
Mr. Taylor and the officer met, separated by a locked glass door. The officer spotted a bulge in Mr. Taylor's short pockets. Mr. Taylor held up a set of car keys and told the officer that he was going to steal a car. The officer instructed him to get on the ground. Mr. Taylor said no and attempted to open the locked door that separated he from the officer.
About that time, Officer Miller and his training superior, Corporal Dale Wiggins, arrived at the building. While the corporal stopped to talk to other officers, Miller, a new officer who was still in his training period, continued on around where Taylor had smashed his SUV through the showroom glass.
Officer Miller entered the location alone through the broken glass door.
Miller spotted Taylor and immediately gave the teen commands. Taylor took off running down this hallway to a locked door.
At this location, Mr. Taylor began lunging his body into the glass door multiple times in an effort to break the glass. Mr. Taylor turns towards Officer Miller and begins to rapidly approach the officer while cursing.
This is when Corporal Wiggins comes into the building and sees the two in the back hallway. Wiggins sees Taylor approaching Miller and ignoring police commands, assesses the threat, and decides to pull out his taser.
At that point, Corporal Wiggins heard a pop and told investigators he believed Officer Miller had fired his taser. The pop heard by Corporal Wiggins was Officer Miller discharging his duty weapon the first time.
Johnson says Corporal Wiggins fired his taser because Taylor was still advancing on Miller, and that's when Miller fired 3 more shots.
We got shots fired.
There was no physical contact between Mr. Taylor and officers.
The mistakes? First, Johnson said Miller should have never gone into the building without letting his corporal know. Second, he should have never gone in after the report of the suspicious bulge in Taylor's pocket. And third, the chief said he had serious concerns about the rationale behind Miller using deadly force.
This unilateral decision to enter the building and to continue the pursuit deeper into the building upon making contact with Mr. Taylor, along with failing to communicate with fellow officers or develop an arrest plan, created an environment of cascading consequences that produced an unrecoverable outcome.
Johnson's conclusion?
I have decided to terminate Officer Miller's employment with the Arlington Police Department for exercising poor judgment.
Now, Officer Miller was a member of the Arlington Municipal Patrolmen's Association. That group sent me a statement saying that they support Officer Miller's right to be judged fairly and completely on facts instead of a snapshot developed only in days. Investigations take time, and as Chief Johnson acknowledged, this investigation is not close to being concluded. Fox 4 placed several calls today into Miller's attorney, and those calls were not returned. Steve?
All right, Brandon, the other thing the chief talked about was the expected grand jury procedure against Officer Miller. What do we know about the criminal investigation?
Well, right now they still have toxicology tests that need to be done on Taylor, and they have ballistics reports that are not finished yet. So once the ballistics report is finished and the toxicology reports are in, that information then will be complete. The investigation will be given to the district attorney, and the district attorney's office will then present that to a grand jury.
I thought it was interesting the chief expressed disappointment in how that entire scene was handled, it seemed, out there. Any other discipline coming for officers who responded, including that training officer, Corporal Dale Wiggins?
No more discipline for any of the other officers that responded, specifically the corporal. I specifically asked that about to the chief today to ask if he was going to be disciplined at all and the way he handled that situation there. But I guess the explanation was that the corporal was not aware that Miller was going into the building. He had turned around, his back was to him, and keep in mind, Miller was on his last day of that training period. So toward the end of that training period, Steve, is when an officer might be a little more on their own. Another thing to note, off the corporal, once he got in there, made the decision to pull the taser. Officer Miller obviously made that decision to pull the gun, and we now know later that bulge that we've been talking about in the pocket of Taylor turned out to be a wallet and cell phone. Steve?
Yeah, it was interesting. You talked, Wiggins heard a pop that was a gun, but he initially thought Miller had also used his taser, but he didn't. It was the gun. All right, Brandon, Todd, thanks.